you cannot become a DevOps engineer if you are not a developer. So you have to be a full stack, a backend before becoming DevOps engineer. This is a myth and a confusion that is always out there, and people get deterred from the DevOps career because of this. They do not want to become developers, and that's why they just leave DevOps and walk away. So is this true? And the answer is no, it is not. So if that is not the case, then why is it spreading, and why there are job posts that are asking for DevOps engineers to know .NET and C# and React and other languages? I'm going to explain that to you, but the answer is you don't have to be a developer to become a DevOps engineer. Let me explain to you, but please consider subscribing to the channel, activating the notification, and we appreciate a like and share for the video to spread and benefit the maximum number of people possible. All right, so if this is the case, and I don't have to become a developer first before becoming a DevOps engineer, then why is this notion or this understanding spreading? Why does a lot of people repeat that and use it as a fact? And not even that, but also a lot of DevOps engineer jobs, they request coding skills. So before we jump into explaining why this is happening, let me give you a brief about CI/CD, which is a core part in DevOps. So we have on this side the developers, the people who are coding, and we have on this side the ops, the people who are running the operations. So steady state, production, ongoing support, and all that stuff. So from the time these developers are going to write their code, and then they're going to put it in a repository, like GitHub, for example, for collaboration. So I have different development teams. They finish what they are supposed to do for this stage, and then they put the code together. And now it's time, after they commit the code, so after they upload the code into GitHub, we need to do integration. So basically we bring the code pieces together and build a draft for the application. Then we have a predetermined set of tests that were designed with the developers included, and maybe the QA engineers, the test engineers. And we do the testing, and then if there are any errors, so we have to go back and give feedback to the development. So they fix the code, they commit it again, we build it again, and we test again. And this is iterative until there are no issues with the code. Then the code can be flagged as ready, and it moves into staging. And from there, based on an approval at a specific time and date, it will be deployed and becomes the new production environment. So the DevOps is basically in this part of the world. So they are not development, and they are not 100% operations. They are the marriage between the two. They are the bridge between the two to ensure that automation is adopted all the way in here. So this is all automated, not manual. And they want to make sure that the build runs without issues, and the test runs without issues, and the staging where the software is going to be ready to be deployed, and so on. So this is the domain of the DevOps. The operations is not canceled by the DevOps, and the development teams are not canceled by introducing the DevOps. Now, to stretch DevOps to be doing coding as well is possible. Small companies. To spread DevOps also to do a lot of operation tasks also is very common in small companies, startups. I have one DevOps engineer and 2 developers. These are the task force or the workforce that I have. So I expect them to do more than their confined domain. So let me now go back to our question, and let me answer that question to you. Keep in mind one fact. The notion or the concept of DevOps is not old. We're talking about 6-7 years maybe now. And that means it has not been fully standardized, and that's why there are different opinions about it. I just mentioned that developers write the code, and then someone or some tool has to integrate that code together into a draft application. And then some code, some tool, or some people will have to do testing, run tests that are predetermined on the code, and then find out if there are any errors, and then giving feedback to the developers. And this is where the whole confusion happens. Developers who are coming from the old IT before DevOps, or old programming before DevOps, what they used to do is They will have testers, they will test the code, and now in their environment it works. So they take the code, maybe upload it in some repo, and then tell the operations and deployment team, here is the code, it worked on our machines in our environment, then please make it work in production, and if you have any problems, we are going to start the finger pointing issues. It worked in my environment, it's your problem. No, it doesn't work in our environment, so it must be your problem. And this is where things start. So this development team, their best dream would be if the deployment team have the necessary skills to fix the problems in the code without having to come back to them, or they will come back to them with a minimal list of issues so they can work on it quickly, and then they bounce it back to the operations and deployment team, and then they keep going in what they were doing. So expectations is what is creating the confusion. So a small company, a startup, has 2-3 developers, and they are always busy. They are working 12-14 hours a day, and now they want to automate the process to the release. So they want DevOps. Now they are going to hire someone. If they are working deeply in Java, they would expect that person to be proficient in Java, is not going to be a source of continuous headache to them by the problems found in testing the code. So they are going to hire someone who is a Java developer and a DevOps engineer. So that's what they want. They want the DevOps to become development and DevOps and operation, and maybe a cook as well, so they can prepare meal for them and all that. So lazy expectations, or small team that is always busy, they don't want more responsibilities, and that's why they expect the DevOps engineer to know everything about their code, be able to read the code, interpret it, understand the logic behind it, and fix the problems, and come back only with 5% or 10% of the problem. So that's the first school of thought. The development team expectation is DevOps is a developer. And there's a lot of job posts that will have 2 or 3 languages, and they expect you to be proficient in these languages. So a developer in this language, that exists. And it is because of this school of thought. I completely disagree with this school of thought, because DevOps, they have enough responsibilities to worry about away from the development. So the second school of thought, which I encourage and I think is the right one, the DevOps engineer must understand enough about programming. Enough means fundamentals. So you know data structures, you know what are loops, you know what are conditionals. You can write a small script in Python, for example. You can write some bash scripting. So you have the logic, you know what data structures, what are the different data types, you know what's a curly brace, you know what's a square bracket, you know about arrays, you know about dictionaries or maps, you know about integers, you know about strings. So you know fundamentals of programming that can be learned in 2 weeks to 1 month, and you have done maybe a script to automate creating a virtual machine on a cloud, or maybe backing up a virtual machine every 12 hours. That would be more than enough for you to start in DevOps. And there is a lot of job posts that will not expect you to be a developer, but they will write clearly that you have to have automation and scripting skills. And that is like a very, very shallow part of programming or development compared to a full stack or a back-end developer. So that is the fact or the reason behind the confusion. So please don't get deterred from DevOps because somebody told you, or you have seen a couple of job posts that suggested you have to be a developer to become DevOps. So that is half of the story, not the full story. Usually the big corporates that have large team of developers for machine learning and developers for the applications, developers for the website and so on, these teams, they wouldn't expect the DevOps engineer to be proficient as a developer. Small companies will. And here is where the confusion or the debate comes from. Now, this is my opinion versus their opinion. So what's the middle ground? What development skills do I have to find out, like the minimum, as a DevOps engineer in order to be a successful DevOps engineer, at least in 50, 60, 70% of the job posts that do not require programming skills? And to do that and to be neutral, I have asked my best friend, ChatGPT, which can search the internet and get the results and the conclusion very quickly, as opposed to me going on different articles and websites, which you may or may not trust the credibility for. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, do I need to learn full stack or back-end programming to become a DevOps engineer? And the short answer, no. You do not need to learn full stack or back-end programming to become a DevOps engineer. But you do need to understand enough programming to automate, debug, and support development workflows. Enough, the minimum amount, the fundamentals. That's what you need to know. And elaborated, here's what you do need to know. While full stack development covers things like front end, React, HTML, and CSS, and back end, APIs, and databases, and so on, DevOps is more concerned with the automation, deployment, and infrastructure. DevOps was created as a mediator between development and operations. But now there was a gap, and DevOps fills that gap without repeating the operations 100% or the development 100%. It's a mediator, someone who can speak the lingo of the developers and can sit in meetings and understand what the developers are talking about, but also can work with the operations team to also understand what is going on and explain the issues that they are facing and what they expect. So it's a translator between two teams that used to point fingers at each other. So being concerned about the automation, deployment, and infrastructure, what do I need to learn? So you need to learn scripting, Python and Bash. And again, Python not for backend, Python only for automation. So you need to focus on how you can automate skills and write deployment scripts. You need to learn Git and GitHub. You need to learn CI/CD tools like GitHub Actions, Jenkins, Argo CD, and so on. You need to know Docker and Kubernetes. You need to know cloud platforms and infrastructure as code like Terraform and Ansible, and monitoring and logging tools like ELK, Grafana, and Prometheus. That is what you need to know. There is nothing here that states that you have to be a back-end developer and you know all the frameworks in Python and in Java and in this and in that in order to become a successful DevOps engineer. What you don't need is front-end frameworks, full stack applications or building user interfaces, or deep knowledge of back-end frameworks like Django and Spring Boot. You don't need that. So this is the conclusion from the internet. So it looks like the school that I am inclined to, and I think is the right one, is prevailing slowly until full standardization happens, and then it will be very clear what to expect from DevOps engineers. That said, understanding how backend application works, so you understand what an API is, what a database is, the ports, environment variables, is very helpful. And I 100% agree. This is fundamentals. And you should be comfortable reading backend code, especially for debugging and configuring environments. So you can read the code and you can make sense of it as much as you can, but you don't have to be proficient or replace the developer when they are sick or on vacation. And in some DevOps roles, you will work closely with developers. Knowing how apps are structured gives you a huge edge. So in some DevOps roles where you are expected to sit more and more with the developers during development, then understanding the application logic and all that would help, which is more towards the first school of thought that we talked about. And then elaborated, what does a DevOps engineer do? So a DevOps engineer sits at the intersection of, so in the middle of development on one side, and development are responsible for the coding, and operations on the other side. And then we have the part in between, which is the pipelines and version control and so on. Now, the minimum number of coding skills or fundamentals, or the minimum amount of fundamentals I need to have as a DevOps engineer to do what? So to some degree, DevOps isn't just server administrator anymore. So modern DevOps roles often require knowledge of, you need to know about scripting. So that's why Python, Bash, and PowerShell are good skills to have. All of them? No. I would recommend Bash and Python. Infrastructure as code. You need to write scripts that will create virtual machines, Kubernetes clusters, Docker, and Jenkins servers, and so on in the cloud. So you need Terraform. Configuration management, you need Ansible, and this is CloudFormation for AWS. This is the counterpart of Terraform, but Terraform is more generic. And in this video, I have explained why you need to learn Terraform. Also, you need to know CI/CD pipelines. You need to know GitHub Actions, Jenkins, GitLab CI, and so on. you do not need to be full stack app developer, but you need to read and write scripts, as we mentioned here, understand version control, Git and GitHub, debug automation and deployment issues, and work with APIs and cloud services on AWS, Azure, and GCP. So the developer skills you should have: scripting, Git, GitHub, Docker, Kubernetes, CI/CD tools, and cloud fundamentals. Nothing at all about that you need to know this framework or that framework or this backend or this front end and so on. You do not need to be a professional software engineer, a UI UX developer, the ones that do or design the interfaces, and a mobile or game developer. You don't need to be that. And the path without traditional development background, you need to learn Linux, scripting, Git and GitHub, Docker and Kubernetes, cloud providers, Terraform, and CI/CD pipelines. That's it. So in summary, you need to be comfortable writing and understanding code. Minimal amount, minimal skills. Because automation, scripting, and infrastructure as code are core parts of DevOps. So you need to know this in order to be able to fulfill these, which are part of your DevOps job, but not a developer job. Then I went on and I asked, okay, fine. Python is very common in automation, in scripting, and also in data science, in data analytics, in machine learning, and ML ops. I mean, Python is your best friend when it comes to the modern IT. So then I asked in a different way, what if I know the following in Python? Are these enough to become a DevOps engineer and cloud engineer? What are these? Fundamentals of Python. Python data structures and types. Conditions and loops. Functions. Modules. pip. Dealing with tables. OS modules, external libraries, and Boto3, which is the SDK, or how you can write scripts to create and control and manage stuff on AWS. What if I only spend, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks learning Python from a course that is 6 hours or 10 hours? Is that enough? Do I have to do a full bootcamp that will be 70, 80 hours and then I spend 100, 200 days on it? And let's see what the answer was. You are in a great position to start your journey towards becoming DevOps or cloud engineer. And your Python foundation is solid and more than enough to build on. And here, break down your current skills, and they went through them. And what you can add next: Linux and Shell, Git and GitHub, Docker and Kubernetes, cloud fundamentals, CI/CD tools, infrastructure as code, and you become a DevOps engineer. So this is from the internet through AI or through ChatGPT. It crawled and find out this summary and these results based on articles and websites and information available on the internet. What do the job boards, the famous ones, say about this, about the jobs available? Do they ask for development or do they not ask for development? And that would confirm the principle of the two schools of thought that I told you about. And the main issue behind that is lack of standardization for DevOps, because it's only 6, 7, 8 years old and it hasn't been standardized and it's not fully adopted yet. So let's go ahead to dice.com. The people watching this video who live in the US, they know what dice.com is, and it is one of maybe 3 or 4 most famous job sites or job boards. And we are going to write junior DevOps engineer because you are starting your journey, and let's find out if there are junior jobs or not, and then what is required in these jobs. So I went into dice.com and I pasted this: junior DevOps engineer or DevOps engineer junior. First of all, there is a lot of responses that have junior DevOps engineer, which confirms that there are junior DevOps engineer jobs, contrary to what a lot of people think. Okay, then I selected some of them. You can do your own search as well and find out. And also you can type the location. I left it to all the US. I did not specify where exactly. And let me start with one that is from the first school of thought. And you can see that the post was 23 days ago and it has been updated 1 day ago before I recorded the video. Let's look at the required skills. See here, they are expecting you to know .NET Core, ASP.NET, and Blazor Stack. And proficiency, not understanding or knowledge. So they expect you to be or to have developed using these development skills or tools. And then they ask for Azure pipelines. They ask for Azure platform experience. So it's more of a Microsoft Azure job. And then Python scripting. So you're not going to get away from Python. And exposure to mobile development on any platform. And what you will be doing, 25 of your time will be in application development. So it's very clear this is a combo, developer and DevOps. Or if it is only DevOps, they are expecting you to spend 25 of your time fixing code that the developers have worked on while you are doing the pipeline. If we look at the others, so this one, for example, and it is 10 days ago, updated 5 days ago. And if you look at the skills, preferred qualification skills, content management, cloud experience or AWS, infrastructure as code, container security management, implementation, orchestration, so Docker and Kubernetes. And then you have application performance management, Dynatrace or similar, LDAP understanding, and agile methodology. And if you go a little bit up, you'll find the details. GitHub Actions, Jenkins, and you have application implementation, Kubernetes, web application, Nginx or Apache, and TCP IP, and Linux, and scripting. Nothing about programming. Another one, 18 days ago, updated 2 days ago. Skills, DevOps practices, AWS and Azure Cloud Platform, Terraform and Ansible, Linux, Git and source control, containerization like Docker is a plus, and then here they have expanded on the scripting, Bash, Python, or PowerShell. If it is a Windows environment, it will be PowerShell. I always recommend Bash and Python because you are going to hit 80-90% of the jobs with these skills. So nothing again about programming whatsoever. Then a third one, and you'll find also in the skills and duties, CI/CD, infrastructure as code, and then you have Kubernetes and Docker, Prometheus, Grafana, and ELK, and collaborate or work closely with a DevOps team. You're not going to develop anything. So this confirms that the job market is not expecting you in the most part to be a developer. However, Python automation, Bash scripting, Terraform, and Ansible are skills that you're not going to get away from. Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes, Bash scripting, and Python. These 5 are modern IT requirements now. Whether this is cloud engineering or you are into DevOps only, DevOps on premises, you will need to have these 5. If you are DevOps, then CI/CD, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, GitLab, and so on. These are skills that you'll have to have on top of these 5. All right. So hopefully this explains it. You don't have to be a developer in order to be a DevOps engineer or to start a DevOps engineer. That's number 1. Number 2, there are junior DevOps engineer jobs. And I'm a strong believer, having lived in the US for many years, that whatever happens in IT in the US is going to be the norm across the globe, but it could be delayed by months or years depending on where you are. So please do this in the job boards that are famous in your country or in your region or in the countries you are aspiring to move to, and find out if this is true or not. And I'm 100% sure that it's going to be true. For the people in the US, it is very clear. You can also go in monster.com, indeed.com, and you'll find the same results. All right. So that's enough for now. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There will be a lot of valuable videos like this one that are going to clear up a lot of confusion in the IT landscape right now. And also, please consider activating the notification to receive those videos and give us a like and share so the video can reach the masses and benefit as many people as we can. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.